Three, two, one. Greetings, everybody. This is David Avocado Wolfe. I've got Patrick Wood on the call for the interview. We're right into the 5G summit, the online summit. You can join at any moment. Join today. I'm going to punch this up onto YouTube today and other social media. So Patrick Wood is an expert on where this technocracy is leading us to, what's going on with 5G, what's the whole agenda of the whole thing. And this is actually better material for YouTube. We were trying to do this on Facebook. Had some glitches there, so let's just go with what's easy. Patrick Wood, how you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so glad at least we got a picture. That's really me. It's not it's not just a JPEG image or something.
They were jamming our transmissions from unknown positions, but we are alive and well, and wherever they are. So Patrick, let's get into this right away. We've only got maybe about 35, 40 minutes. I really want to hear what you got to say. You are really an expert on where this is all heading and how this technology works. What do you think is the most pertinent issue we should jump into first for people to hear who don't really realize what we're getting into?
Right. Well, the whole 5G universe right now, people are very concerned about it all around the world. It's not just in America. It's in Europe and anywhere else this is going in. People are upset about it. And the first reason, the knee-jerk reason, is always the health issues. Because the big companies that are promoting this, the Verizons, the T-Mobiles, and so on, and the hardware manufacturers as well, they all refuse to do any testing to see what effect this might actually have on people. And we already know that there's a host of problems around with 5G, with cell phones in general. People have gotten tumors, they've gotten, different types of cancers and stuff. So that doesn't prove the case, I realize, but the companies that are promoting this stuff are blocking all legitimate studies, scientific studies, to find out for sure what's going on. So that's a problem. To me, however, the bigger problem has always been, from my perspective, is that if the 5G system gets installed around the world, it will enable, let's say, light up like a Christmas tree, the so-called Internet of Things that big tech companies have been implementing as smart city technology. There are plenty of examples of that around the world. China is a good example right now, and for a large country. But we have examples here in the United States as well on how smart city technology relies on the Internet of Things. And if people don't understand what IoT means, that's where you have all of these mostly inert devices, whether it be the refrigerator in your house or your TV or your smartphone or your car now, especially autonomous cars. All of these devices, a smart meter, let's not forget smart meter on the side of your home.
Right.
All devices can talk together now, or they will with the Internet of Things. And the thing with 5G is that it's providing real-time access for all these devices. This has never been done in the history of the world. And by real-time, I mean that an entire city could be equipped with 5G transmitters that would pump data on a real-time, just instantaneous basis back to a computer for computer analysis and modeling. This was originally the master dream of technocracy, was to have real-time monitoring, allowing for real-time control over the entire mechanism. This is called, in my book, this is the simplest example of scientific dictatorship that you can have. So yes, there's health issues on one hand, and people are concerned about that. I wish that everybody, however, would understand the greater risk of scientific dictatorship, because that's permanent. That's not something you can shield yourself from. Once it's installed, it ain't going back.
Let's talk about that a little bit, because we know certain things are kind of facts of history. One of them is civilizations don't last forever. Two, democracies can very quickly be turned into tyrannies and dictatorship. It seems like almost people just lose the lessons of history in some strange way. They don't really realize the dangers of what we're running into. Let's talk about some of the dangers of this. For example, you talked about autonomous cars. Well, under the Internet of Things with 5G towers, and by the way, for everyone who doesn't know, 5G means fifth generation of our mobile phone, mobile device technology. Also in your home, there could be a 5G phone or 5G router, 100 times higher radiation. Is that right, Patrick?
That's essentially right. And it's a different kind of radiation. It's not like it's a higher frequency than we had with 4G and 3G. And on top of that, you mentioned, that's a good thing you mentioned that. Some people are thinking that 5G is going to replace everything else, like all the 4G transmitters are going to come down. That's not true. This is on top of all of that.
Oh, geez. Whoa.
All of the 4G, all of 3G stuff's going to stay up. All those mushroom towers where you have all of the, the array of antennas around it, those aren't going anywhere. These are brand new. This is a brand new overlay system on top of that. So now what you have is kind of a toxic stew, if you will, of multiple frequencies broadcasting at the same time. And there's problems with that too, just like there is with electricity. When you get multiple frequencies interacting with each other, all of a sudden you have a third entity enter into it because the frequencies get dirty and they start to do things they weren't intended to do in the first place. So yeah, there's lots of problems with it.
Let's just talk about autonomous cars. Come up for me, this idea that your car, if you're running an autonomous car, or even the very heavily computerized cars today, could be hacked. They could be hacked via a 5G connection much more easily, I would assume, because it's so real time, it's so instantaneous. So the dangers of hacking our devices, our home, our refrigerator, our toaster, our TV, and our vehicle are very real. Tell us a little bit about that.
They're already being hacked. This is not a theory. It's already happened. And I saw an article just this week, last week, that somebody had hacked into a Tesla like in 2 minutes and took over the car. Anything on the internet can be hacked. People just don't get this. There's no such thing as absolute security on the internet. That doesn't mean there shouldn't be. I'm come from an IT background, so I really believe, honestly, that if programmers put their mind to it, they could secure any given system that they set their mind to secure. But because there's no profit in security like that, it hasn't been done. And so the programmers or companies that programmers work for, they release this stuff too early without proving. Gee, doesn't that remind you of what's going on with the 5G anyway? They don't prove the security before they release it to the public. And once it's out, nobody's going to go back and fix it. Yeah, you got to break a few eggs to make an omelet. So what if a few people get hacked? Most people aren't getting hacked, right? So this is stupid logic. But yes, it's basically a wide open invitation for programmers now, for hackers, black hat hackers especially, to break in and take control of devices for all kinds of reasons. You know why the government doesn't care about this, David, is because the government, well, I shouldn't say the government, let's say the technocrat big tech elite. The reason they don't get too concerned about what leaks out the back door is that it doesn't affect their control over the system. Nobody has enough data nor enough ability to use that data for anything useful to control the system. They still have absolute control of the system. A good example would be if you cut yourself and you lose a little bit of blood, as long as the thing stops eventually, you don't really care that you lost a little blood. You're still alive and you're still functioning, right?
Yeah.
So this is the mentality that big tech has. If they lose some stuff out the back door, no big whoop. But it doesn't affect their ability to control the entire social mechanism. And that's what they're after in the first place. That's the only thing they're after, honestly.
I've been hearing about, money is no, I've heard a statistic that YouTube lost $70 billion, last year, some crazy thing like that. It's like, well, they must not care about money. What do they care about? What is it that these big tech elites really, really want?
The money is in the data. The data is the new oil of the 21st century. It's a gusher. I say it's a gusher. And everybody is clamoring for data. That's why you saw companies like Amazon, for instance, which back when Amazon first started, everybody thought Amazon was nuts. You know, this guy can sell books over the internet. You're kidding me. But he had a vision that the future of wealth was going to be seen in the data that can be collected from people, massaged and monetized and sold to the highest bidders. And this is proven true. We see this everywhere. Anywhere you see a collection of data, you will find technocrats hoarding that data. I mean, they have a bloodlust for data. They want it. They can't get enough of it. There's no such thing as enough. So all of these companies are competing to get your and my data. That includes the phone companies. It includes, you know, all of the big tech companies, the search engines, the Facebooks of the world. Once they have the data, and to the extent that they can have data domination, they will be the new global elite billionaires of the next generation.
This is kind of, it reminds me a little bit of like why the reason, you know, what is this AI all about? Well, if you just feed the AI the data, then it's going to come up with algorithms that are going to correlate to your behavior. And so your buying behavior, your political behavior, any behavior can be predicted and monitored. Is that really what's behind this data collection?
Oh, that's exactly what it is. The technocracy, when it first started back in the 1930s, they wrote down certain requirements that would be necessary to make the system work. One of the biggest requirements was total data collection of everything in the system, on people, on all transactions, on, you know, everything that goes on. They knew, well, you could imagine if you owned a factory and you had, say, 1,000 workers in a big old factory out there with machines and belts and stuff, gears, you know, you would want to know what's going on in your factory. If all of a sudden a belt stopped or some process stopped, your whole factory could go down and you lose money by the hour. You would want to put in place monitoring systems to know what's going on your factory floor all the time. And if something gets weak, like let's say the oil starts to leak out of something, you'd like to have advance notice on that. Okay, I'm going to send my tech down or my mechanic down and fix that before it causes the bigger problem. This is the mentality that technocrats are using to manage society. We call it social engineering. You could call it scientific dictatorship if you wanted to. But the whole idea of collecting all this information is to turn around and manage the society that's the target of that information. Well, when AI really got going, this fit into the technocrat plan so perfectly. But the problem has been AI doesn't do anything until it's fed a data stream. It has to have a data stream in order to learn, in order to make any sense of everything. Static data means nothing to artificial intelligence. And it means nothing to artificial intelligence programmers. It can only roughly test the validity of their program. You know, well, will it work? Well, we think it will. You know, we kind of model some stuff. We pump some historical data into it, kind of, you know, simulating real-time data feed, right? And we think it'll work. But until real-time access of data can be fed to these artificial intelligence programs, they won't really come into their own, okay? They will be activated or actualized or, you know, self-active, whatever, once the data stream comes in on a real-time basis. This is why technocrats are salivating over 5G, because it provides this real-time data flow feed to go into their artificial intelligence programs, which are geared to turn around and make adjustments to society to do what they wanted to do. It's just that, I mean, it's really just that simple. It's such a big concept, though, David, that people can't, oh, that's just too big. I can't, you know, that can't be happening to us here in America. Well, just look at China.
Let's talk about that, the social credit score system. I want to hear your take on that. How close is that coming over to the West? I've heard it's already in Darwin, Australia, and Sydney, Australia. What's happening with the
It
social
is.
credit score, and what is it?
It's already here. And by the way, I just posted an article today on technocracy.news that deals with this very thing. Fast Company, a journal, a blog, put out an article that said that Silicon Valley, big tech, are creating a social credit system right now. This is already here. It's not like we're waiting for it, to come. It's already here in its early iteration. But in China, where they've created, they made it an art now of surveilling everything. They got, by next year, they say they're going to have 600 million cameras installed in China. That's one camera for every 2.5 people. You think that's enough? But those cameras have facial recognition. They can track you down the street no matter where you go, no matter what city you're in now. And they also pick up all of the other data on you, your interactions with the government, everything you purchase, all the people you contact and you're friends with, who you talk to on social media, yada, yada. All of this information goes into one big artificial intelligence program. That program then looks at you and, decides, are you a model citizen to live in our technocracy or not? And if you're really, kind of say a government brown noser, you're going to get a score that's really up there. Maybe you get a 650 or a 680 score, out of 700. But if you're a troublemaker, like you and me, I don't think we should go to China, David. Honestly, we'll end up with a score of 200, right? Well, if you fall below a certain level in China, you will automatically start being excluded from certain services that other people have. For instance, you may get kicked out of the school you're going to because you're not allowed to go to that school. It's a better school, perhaps, and you can't go there. You might get kicked out of your apartment. If there's lower cost housing for you, they might boot you out. If you try and buy a train ticket or a plane ticket on their high-speed travel systems, can't do it. You say, sorry, sir, but your social credit score is too low or whatever. You can't do it. And this goes on down the line. So you become a second-class citizen if you don't measure up to their idea of what you should be, right?
And isn't that the key thing? It's their idea of what you should be, the technocrats' idea of what you should be. And this is one of the things that we find in social media world is like, oh, but it's not, come on, you've got to be a good person, or it's like, whoa, who's going to decide all that? Who's going to decide who's a good person, who's a bad person, what's good behavior, what's bad behavior? Yes. It's getting to a very interesting precipice that we're on here. What's going to happen next? And by the way, for everyone joining us right now, I'm David Avocado Wolfe. I'm joined by Patrick Wood. Is it technocracy.news is your website?
Yes. Yeah.
I'll put the links down there below so you can check out his website. And we're discussing the 5G rollout, and the 5G online summit's happening right now. So click the link below, join it. It's no cost, no obligation. It's just an educational platform for you to learn what's going on. But where do we go from here, Patrick? What's going to happen next?
Well, it's important to, I'll just make one point about social media and Google in particular on the censorship that we see of all these things. It should become apparent to people that big tech is not just censoring conservatives. This has kind of been the talk. This has dominated the conversation. But it's not. It's not just conservatives that are getting dinged, and people need to make that distinction because these technocrats are thinking on a different wavelength. It just so happens that many conservatives find themselves talking about issues that really rattles the big tech's cage. So yes, you do see a lot of conservative sites that have been bombed, like nuked out of existence, and their traffic disappeared on Google and so on. But listen, Google also nailed Joseph Mercola. Gone. His traffic went down 90% because, here's a guy that has one of the largest websites in the world and is thoroughly legitimate by anybody's measure, but Google decided, no, you're not promoting our thing here, you're gone. And you have people like Robert Kennedy Jr. And I mention these people because they're not really in the conservative camp in the first place. Robert Kennedy Jr. is doing a wonderful job on anti-vaccine stuff and also now on 5G, right? You can't find him either.
Yeah.
They have just excluded him from the discussion. Well, let me tell you, if a Kennedy can't survive in social media, there's something else that's going on, right? This is issue oriented. If the technocrats have their idea of where this is going in scientific dictatorship and control, social engineering. If anybody gets in the way of that, they're gone. Just that simple. It doesn't matter if you're liberal, a conservative, left wing, right wing. There are people even, by the way, in the original environmental movement in this country. Some of those are old gray-haired hippies now. They still got ponytails, right? You'll find that some of them have been completely banned because they're not towing the current party line.
I was banned on YouTube. This is my second try at YouTube here, so we'll see, what happens in the future. But they deleted me for one video that I did on CBD. I wasn't even making any claims. I was just reporting on it like a reporter. They deleted everything I had 10 years of work without any response. No response at all. And they were probably looking at me like they did Joseph Mercola. Dr. Mercola has a long history of, fighting the technocratic pharmaceutical industry. And they're like, we got to get rid of this guy. Here's our chance. Let's just get rid of him. And they just deleted everything and wiped out all my, my rankings, just deleted it. And this is why I came back on YouTube, because I just, even at a small scale, any scale, doesn't matter. We got to get the word out there, Patrick. We really do.
Yes, absolutely. And people do want to listen. I have to say, my experience with the public, and I've had my problems with shadow banning too on certain things, but my perception is people do want to know. It's just a matter of getting to them. I even suggested to some friends that the era of pamphleteering may return.
I agree. That's so interesting. That's so interesting. I agree. Not only that, you know what had wiped me out for many years, Patrick, is I'm a public speaker. I've done thousands of events all over the world, sometimes 4 or 5 a week. But as the internet came in bigger and bigger, people are like, oh, we'll get it all on the internet. We don't have to show up to the event. But guess what? Now you show up to the event. My events are going back up again. It's interesting.
It is. I think that's a trend. Social media is going to shoot themselves in the foot. If we have to go back to the printed page, well, we'll go back to printed page. Who cares?
Yep.
People want to know.
People want to know, and for everyone joining us, I'm David Avocado Wolfe, joined by Patrick Wood, an expert. He's an expert in technocracy and where this whole thing's headed. I got to ask you one final question here, Patrick, and it's just something, in my research, I got into Rudolf Steiner and his whole take on what was going to be coming up in the future. He called it an Ahrimanic deception, which is basically another word for technocracy. Another word that we're hearing is scientism. And I'd love to hear more about the philosophy but energetically behind these control freaks. I mean, for lack of a better word, that's kind of what comes up. It's like, why do these people want to control everybody, control everything? What is going on with the whole philosophy of these people behind it all?
Well, scientism is the root of 2 different movements in society today. One is technocracy. The other is transhumanism. And we're not going to touch on that. I realize it's not time, but transhumanism is the reformation of the human condition. In other words, using high-tech discoveries to achieve immortality, essentially. That's their dream. The technocracy angle is for society. And as technocracy is to society, transhumanism is to the people who would live in that technocracy, okay? So you got society and people. They're both based on scientism. Scientism is a religion. It's been written about extensively over history. There's a large body of information on it. People can go look it up. It originated with a French philosopher in the early 1800s, Henri de Saint-Simon. He was the guy, let's call him Henry. He was the guy that came up with this whole idea of scientism. And he postulated that scientists are better than anybody else, number one, and secondly, that they can predict the future. That was kind of the simplest part of it. We see this today all over the place. These people think they can predict the future. All that they got pre-crime software, you got algorithms, you got to tell you when you're going to die. I mean, come on, guys. There's no crystal ball here, but they think they have a crystal ball. And the other thing is that they think they're better than anybody else. Like, hey, I'm a scientist. I have a PhD. You can't question me. And if you do, you deserve to be punished. That's exactly what Al Gore said, by the way. Deniers deserve to be punished. That's crazy. That's a religion. This is just like the Salem witch trials, if you will. Somebody doesn't look right, go burn them at the stake. Well, this is the religious aspect. They will not be moved according to facts, right? Forget the facts. Like Joe Biden said the other day, what did he say? He said, we take truth over facts. Truth over facts. Oh my, where have we come to? This is the problem.
It's amazing. You've got a real grasp on it. It's very rare, Patrick. I got to tell you, honestly, it's rare that I get somebody, on an interview who really has a grasp on what the real issue is, which is scientism is a religion. It's got its creation story, the Big Bang. It's got the theory of evolution. Who survives? The fittest. Who are they? The ones who survive. It's a tautology. It's not predictive. It doesn't tell us anything. It's just an explanation that doesn't. It's just, how do we get here? We evolved. How do we evolve? Through survival. Who survived? The fittest. Who are they? The ones who survived. It doesn't mean anything.
Here's the worst thing about scientism. Scientism is exclusive in the sense that they say that the only way to discover truth about reality is through science. That excludes all philosophy, by the way.
Yeah.
You think every PhD philosopher rip up his certificate or whatever, throw it in the trash. These people say, no, if we can't demonstrate it through science, it doesn't exist. Now, you just have to think about that for a minute. That's false. That's not true. Just go. If anybody's married, go home tonight and tell your wife, you heard that truth has to be validated by science, and no, they can't validate love. So it's nice living with you, but I guess I don't love you.
It's not been proved scientifically.
Because it can't be proved. Just try that on your wife and see how far you get, right? You'll be sleeping on the couch for the next 5 years. Of course there's truth outside of science, for Pete's sake. We're human beings. There's all kinds of things. All of our emotional makeup is what makes us human. And these people think that they're going to make artificial intelligence that's sentient, that's going to replace humans, that's going to feel, and maybe they'll have robot rights someday. I mean, get out of here. That ain't never going to happen in 10,000 years. But they're deceiving people like a good magician. They're deceiving people with this high-tech nonsense that says, watch my hand over here. And meanwhile, they're picking your pocket over here. Right?
That's, for years, Patrick, I've been saying that about the space program. They've been picking our pockets so hardcore with this. I call it the spaced out program, because as you look deeper into it, you realize, geez, there's direct fraud going on here. Where's the money going? What's going on? And so I've been, that's my particular locus of focus, because I find that interesting. But there's so many areas. For example, we have the science over here. There was 50 studies done, 3 promoted our little pharmaceutical product. And so we're just going to hold those 3. We got rid of the other ones because they weren't in our favor. This type of checkbook science, also a major problem.
It is. And that's just the point of the whole thing. Scientism is anti-science.
Oh, God, you got it. It's anti the whole scientific idea, which is, let's test all assumptions. We don't believe it. Let's just retest it all again. But scientism is against that. It's really interesting. Keep going on that. That's an excellent thought.
Well, it is. Just because it has the word science and ism doesn't mean it's scientific. And if you talk to any legitimate engineer that isn't infected with scientism, that hasn't believed that, You talk to any scientist or engineer outside of that, and he will tell you point blank it's absolute nonsense. It's not science. It's anti-science. And these people are doing stuff that's just completely off the wall. And basically, they want no part of them. Unfortunately, the political machinery now has been dominated, if you will, kind of like crabgrass getting into your lawn. You know, they've kind of come in and they dominate the political arena to the extent that these other legitimate scientists have been frozen out of the discussion, and they're being mocked. Basically, oh, you know, you're a conspiracy theorist,
right? Or you're not scientific. You're a pseudoscientist. That's a big one. They love that one.
Yeah. So they're the pot calling maybe calling the kettle black. I don't know, but you know, there used to be back during the Cold War days, there was kind of a joke. It became a joke that whatever Russia accused the United States of doing, we could expect that's exactly what they were doing, you know, and they wanted to cover their keisters by accusing us of doing that, so we couldn't turn around and accuse them of doing it. This became legendary. This was a propaganda tactic. It's exactly what we see today.
And it's flipped, but it's interesting how it's flipped. Now it's the USA.
Yes, exactly.
It's so interesting. You know, I want to tell you one story, Patrick. This is interesting. A friend of mine moved to Canada this is back, I think it was in the 80s. And he ran into a couple who the guy was a pilot. He escaped Stalin's Russia in 1951. Him and his wife, he was a commercial pilot. He took a plane, basically stole it, flew over the Arctic, landed in Canada on native land, First Nations land, integrated in with the natives. The natives took him and his wife in. He gradually worked his way into Canadian society, and now him and his wife are part of Canadian society. This is a friend of mine met him when he moved to Canada, him and his wife. And I was thinking, you know what, that's only like 60, 70 years ago. In another 60 or 70 years, we're probably going to be turning around, jumping on a plane, trying to fly the other way.
I know. The world has been tossed like a green salad. You know, it's just like nothing makes any sense anymore. There's no place to run. You know, and yeah, people are going to move back and forth, and we may find freedom in some very odd places in the future if we can't reclaim freedom here in our country.
Yeah, I agree. Thanks so much for joining us, Patrick Wood. I'm going to put his links right down there below. Patrick, give us your contact info, and just so we got it verbally if people are listening on their phones.
You bet. Everything that I have is at technocracy.news. That's .news, not .com. And you'll find books, articles, stories, videos, you name it, it's all there. So if you want to get up on Technocracy, and I suggest that you do strongly, go to technocracy.news and dig in.
Patrick, really wonderful to meet you. Thanks so much for taking the time this morning. We had some tech glitches, but we got through it. And this will be posted out on social media all over the place, and even on Telegram, which I use a lot after all the censorship that I've been through. So anyway, thanks so much for joining us. Join the 5G Summit. The links are below. Check out Patrick's site. The links are below. And of course, no matter what is happening, have the best day ever. Cheers.